Energy policy, net zero, and the collapse of governance in Britain. 1. The hidden tax on energy. British households and industries now pay among the highest electricity prices in the developed world. This is not the product of natural scarcity, but of deliberate government design. Subsidies for renewable generation, transmission infrastructure, and backup capacity are not funded through transparent taxation. Instead, they are imposed through retail bills. This stealth tax avoids parliamentary scrutiny and conceals billions in annual costs. Consumers are further forced to compensate wind farms for curtailed output, often paying both the renewable generator to switch off and a gas station downstream to switch on. This is not a rational market, it is a state-engineered burden imposed in the name of ideology. Footnote: Britain's high energy costs stem from subsidies and levies hidden in electricity bills, functioning as taxation without accountability. 2. Structural instability of the grid. Electricity grids function on alternating current, stabilized by the inertia of heavy rotating machinery. Gas, nuclear, and hydro turbines provide this inertia. Renewables and batteries, reliant on direct current and power electronics, lack such stabilizing capacity. As renewables displace conventional generation, the grid becomes more fragile. In Spain and Portugal, the Iberian blackout demonstrated this. Frequency disturbances initiated by a faulty solar inverter cascaded through a low inertia system, tripping renewables, then conventional generators, and leaving 11 dead. France, with its nuclear-based, high inertia system, experienced only local interruptions. The lesson is unambiguous: stability cannot be engineered away by ideology. Footnote: Renewable overpenetration reduces grid inertia, heightening blackout risks, as evidenced by the Iberian crisis. 3. Ideology versus reality. Despite evidence of higher costs and greater fragility, political elites maintain a zealotry of renewables. Claims that wind and solar are cheaper than gas collapse under scrutiny. Wholesale prices remain lower than subsidized offshore wind, and intermittent renewables impose massive hidden balancing costs. Yet policymakers repeat the mantra of cheap green power while simultaneously admitting that bills will remain high until at least 2042. This contradiction reveals that the program is not about economics, but about political virtue signaling and the manufacturing of consent. Footnote: Renewable advocacy persists despite evidence of higher costs, exposing the ideological rather than scientific basis of net zero policy. 4. The social cost, fuel poverty and premature death. Energy policy in Britain is not a neutral technocratic exercise. It has direct consequences for public health and mortality. The elderly, already vulnerable to cold winters, now face impossible heating bills. Each year, tens of thousands die prematurely from what is politely termed excess winter deaths. In truth, these are not acts of nature but outcomes of deliberate policy. Government documents quietly admit that carbon taxes and green levies increase household bills, yet such costs are politically hidden. Meanwhile, ministers congratulate themselves on world-leading net zero targets. The grim paradox is that British citizens are sacrificed on the altar of global virtue, while emissions in China, India, and Africa rise unchecked. Footnote: British net zero policies have caused fuel poverty and tens of thousands of premature deaths annually, exposing the human cost of green levies. 5. The carbon border adjustment and economic warfare. The European Union has unveiled the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, effectively a tariff regime imposed under the guise of climate policy. Goods imported into Europe will be taxed according to their embedded carbon, regardless of efficiency or consumer demand. This is not free trade but disguised protectionism, designed to shield high-cost European industries from global competition. Britain, rather than resist, is already shadowing Brussels. The result will be to cripple developing economies, penalize domestic manufacturers, and reduce consumer choice. It also deepens global fragmentation, Western blocs using carbon lawfare against Asia, while the global South forms parallel supply chains. This is not environmentalism, it is economic warfare dressed in green robes. Footnote: The EU's carbon border tax, copied by Britain, weaponizes climate policy into protectionism and destabilizes global trade. 6. Administrative capture, the rise of the bureaucratic state. A striking feature of Britain's net zero strategy is that it was never voted on. Parliament has not scrutinised the individual levies, subsidies, or penalties that now dominate the energy market. Instead, the framework was engineered by the permanent civil service and quasi-autonomous regulators. This administrative class, unelected and unaccountable, has elevated itself into a form of shadow government. Ministers rotate every year, but the bureaucrats remain. They write the policies, manage the targets, and enforce compliance. Elected officials, lacking expertise, are effectively ventriloquized. What results is governance without democracy, a managerial state pursuing ideological projects regardless of cost or consent. Footnote: Britain's net zero regime reflects administrative capture, where unelected bureaucrats impose binding policies beyond parliamentary control. 7. Regulatory paralysis and political cowardice. The legal fiction of independent regulators allows ministers to disclaim responsibility for policy failures. When electricity prices soar, officials point to Ofgem. When industries collapse under carbon levies, they blame the Climate Change Committee. Yet all of these agencies derive authority from statute, meaning Parliament remains responsible. The diffusion of responsibility is intentional, no one individual can be held accountable, so no one pays a political price. This design ensures continuity of policy even in the face of public backlash. It is, in effect, a constitutional bypass. The people may vote for change, but the machinery of government remains insulated from their will. Footnote: Delegated regulators allow ministers to evade accountability, creating a constitutional bypass that nullifies democratic control. 8. Consequences: political fragmentation and legitimacy crisis. The cumulative effect of these dynamics is a widening crisis of legitimacy. Voters sense that their bills rise not because of market forces but because of hidden political engineering. They sense that Parliament no longer governs in their interests but serves supranational agendas and bureaucratic inertia. The more they push back, the more they are told the policies are legally binding and therefore cannot be altered. This circular logic breeds cynicism, abstention, and eventually revolt. When policies designed in Whitehall and Brussels produce cold homes, shuttered factories, and economic decline, the people conclude, correctly, that they have been disenfranchised. Footnote: Hidden energy taxation and bureaucratic entrenchment undermine democratic legitimacy, fostering public alienation and political instability.